what happens when a seller doesn't engage with a real estate professional early enough, and maybe how early should they engage?
The earlier, the better.
It's true. It is.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds weird, but it's never too late to call us.
Can you speak to the timing on getting a house to market?
There's always been the traditional spring market.
Yeah.
Like, we got to get ready for spring. We got to get ready for spring.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tony Cardinali with the CrossCountry Mortgage. I'm a residential mortgage lender, and I'm hosting a podcast today called the Real Estate Solutions Lab. This is where I bring experts in to talk about solutions to problems we see in real estate and mortgage lending today, and we really trying to highlight things that today are becoming the biggest issues in our real estate industry, whether it's buying a home, selling a home. We'll be covering these different topics, and today I've got Bill and Linda with me, a long time, working together a very long time.
Very long time.
And we're going to be talking about when to engage a real estate professional about buying or selling a home. And this is a real big problem we see because it kind of falls in everybody's lap later that things start to go wrong because some things weren't handled early on in a person's preparations. So we try to avoid those things by preparing people early and often. And this is one thing I'd like to talk to them about different solutions. So Bill Pazricki, Linda Arpino of the Pazricki Arpino Real Estate Team, if I say that fast. Keller Williams.
Yes.
So I just want to introduce our guests briefly. I've known Bill and Linda for quite a while. We've worked together on many, many transactions. And so we have a lot of experience working together, so we can easily talk about things we've worked on together. But also, I'd like to hear a little bit more about how you got in the business and perhaps why a team. I hear a lot about real estate teams, and I've never been had a chance to sit down with one like this and really understand why a team brings a lot to the table. So that'd be a great place to start.
Sure.
Okay.
So I got in the business, so we've both been in it about 21 years now. And I have a background in financial services marketing. And then when I moved out to Chelmsford, it was a little bit more to commute into Boston every day. So I did that for about a year and a half more when I moved out this way, and then started to think about what's another career choice that I can use. My marketing, client services was always a background of mine as well. And I always loved watching HGTV. And I'm thinking, wow, it's going to be just like HGTV. So why not real estate?
Yeah.
And that's how it started for me.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
Great.
And similar, I came from a high-tech marketing background in security. So I was doing firewalling and VPN when they were first starting.
Wow.
And through that, got sent away by a few companies as people grew.
Yeah.
So I was looking for something different as well. And when it comes down to it, it sounds a little cold, but when you go to put a house on the market, it's a product. I'm used to bringing products to market and selling them and finding out the pricing and the contingency and what's that rolling thunder marketing plan that you want. The house really isn't much different. We have to figure all that stuff out. So it seemed to dovetail nicely into doing that.
Very good. And how about why a team? Why is the team the right way to go?
We started around the same time. I think Linda was there a month or two early. So we were the newbies sitting back to back at another agency, worried that we were going to get our forms wrong. So we were constantly helping each other out. So it started as just a friendship, helping each other, would cover for each other. And little by little, it grew into, okay, let's team up, not officially, but let's kind of team up and see how we do, make sure it's going to work, and it did. And then about, maybe 18 years ago or so, we formed the Pazricki Arpino team.
And we're a partnership, which is a little bit different. Yes. A lot of people have a team, they have someone up top, and then agents that work underneath them, where we're sort of partners, 50-50 kind of a deal, which is nice for any small business, as you know. Yeah. It's hard to be able to have, set those boundaries, have a life, and keep your business going, because your business comes home with you every single day. Right. So this has a nice, where any client that works with us has, the same representation, no matter who gets you that weekend.
And access as well. I mean, correct. One is busy, the other is there.
Right. Exactly.
That's really helpful. Well, great. Well, anything where there's a complicated transaction or where there's money involved for sure can produce a lot of anxiety. And I know I can suffer from overthinking things and being anxious about things, especially when I don't know what I'm getting into. And I think real estate presents a real clear path to anxiety for someone that's not prepared. And that's why I think this subject is perfect for right now, because the world is moving so quickly and people are diving into transactions or real estate purchases, making commitments to huge mortgage payments and large sums of money that they're putting down, taking out big amounts of debt, and not really understanding what they're getting into. And I try to prepare people as best I can when I do get a hold of them and start talking with them, but I can only squeeze so much into a 1 or 2 day period. And I got a call yesterday about someone that wants to make an offer by Tuesday morning. Right. And they don't know what they're getting into by Tuesday morning, but they want to make an offer on a house because they need housing. Right. You know, the end goal is they don't want a mortgage, they don't want to buy a house, they just want to have the result of having a house. And this is the one they want to get. So a lot is being jammed into a day and a half. But can you introduce the subject to me about I guess we'll start with the issues of approaching a real estate professional late and not early enough, and perhaps what are some of the things that happen when let's start with sellers, because I think that's where the root of everything is. What happens when a seller doesn't engage with a real estate professional early enough, and maybe how early should they engage?
The earlier, the better.
That's true. It is.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds weird, but it's never too late to call us. Yeah. If you're just thinking about it, even if you don't know if you want to sell or don't want to sell, because it can be a daunting task. Right. People feel that, well, if I can just get the house ready and it looks good, I'm ready to go. Right. There's a lot of things that are behind the scenes to that. We would come through and see what you should do to get that home ready, to get that product ready to go to market, as I mentioned before, and the things that you don't have to do. It's just as important. All of your maintenance items, maybe there's some deferred maintenance that needs to be looked at. Mm-hmm. How is your heating system, your air conditioning? If you're on septic and well, you need to do your Title V, you need to do your well water test. So it all starts to add up. So if you get us in early, then we can realize what your goals are and come up with a solution-based schedule for you that meets your need in your time frame. Got it. If you don't call us in early enough and you think you're ready, and we walk in and say, oh, did you schedule your Title V? Are you going to take care of that stuff? Are you going to paint a little bit? Now it becomes stressful. And now their time frame is off. You know how it is getting contractors in. No offense to any of the contractors that are out there, but that's difficult. Then it becomes stressful, and now it's a difficult process.
And as an agent, we're looking at a house differently than you. So you as the owner, I mean, in my own house, you live with stuff every day, and it's like it's not there anymore. Yeah. I had someone the other day say, there's still a Christmas ornament hanging from that chandelier, and I was like, oh wow, look at that. That's been there for what? We're in July, August. That's been there for 8 months. It blends in. So we're walking through, and we've got a whole different eye of what. We know where trouble spots can happen in a house. We're looking at it with fresh eyes. Yeah. So just in general, that's just one of the things where you think you've got everything ready, and then it's disappointing if you think you're all set to go and you got an agent walk through and say, okay, I got 10 things that you need to do. And you're like, what do you mean? 10 things? I'm all ready. I'm like, well, not really.
It can be cheaper in most cases for a seller to take care of it before the buyers come through, before the inspectors show up. And when you do all those things and you create a list for your buyers, they can see that the home has been taken care of. Mm-hmm. They know that you're up to date with your maintenance, that your heating system, again, was just serviced. Everything is in line for them. So now the buyer can come in and enjoy the house from what they're seeing, knowing that all the behind-the-scene things have been done.
Right. Really important. So there's issues, obviously, you're talking about deferred maintenance. Those are things that could be taken care of earlier, maybe cheaper. You get more than one bid. You're not in a rush to jam somebody in there to fix something before closing. And you could also be able to coach people on what they don't need to fix. Perhaps they're thinking, I got to do all this. I never am going to go and get on the market. You can say, you don't need to do those things. Right. They're not going to add market value to your home. Right. So those are helpful. How about if they're running in the door late, sliding into home plate to try to get you in there to list their property? are there any kind of pricing mistakes or legal issues that could come up that they haven't thought about yet? Because I've seen a couple. Have you guys thought of any sort of pricing issues that they would make? Mistakes, perhaps pricing mistakes, where they may price the property incorrectly because they're just rushing in the door and they haven't had a chance to look at the market.
From a seller perspective?
Yeah.
I mean, from a seller perspective, I'm thinking of the pricing of my own house.
Yeah.
A lot of people rely upon, they're on Zillow or they're looking at their tax rate or their, there's lots of different things that they can think add value to a house, but really don't.
Right.
Or they just had they're refinancing or they're getting a home equity, like a recent one of those appraisals that give you kind of a price range are different than a market value.
Right.
So there's a lot of things that people think help them figure out what price range they should be in that in fact are going to lead them astray.
Got it. So timing-wise, if they wait till the last minute, they might have missed the market, because I had someone that came to me that feels like they really did miss the market. Is it true that there are better times than others to list your home, and that, it's better to have that education up front? Like, can you speak to the timing on getting a house to market?
Sure. I think that there's always been the traditional spring market.
Yeah.
Like, we got to get ready for spring. We got to get ready for spring. And yes, there is definitely a spring time frame. New buyers come in each year. It's an annual thing. They put, next year we're going to start. So there definitely is more buyers that enter in that time frame. But you also do have more competition, so it kind of goes hand in hand. And a seller thinks of spring as like when all the flowers are blooming and everything's, May, for instance. That that's too late. Mm-hmm. If you're truly looking for that spring and the most amount of buyers, and that would be like March, weather determined.
Yes, I was just going to say that, yes.
Spring market can be February, March.
Yeah.
Right. The real estate spring market is not the spring market that people think of, because the buyers are starting early. They're doing their project management and backing everything up. So if they're interested in a school system and get their children in a school system, they understand, especially in this market, they've got to start looking in January, February, and hopefully Mother Nature is cooperating.
Right.
So when they're done, finally finding something and securing it, they're in that time frame that they can get them into that school system. As long as they have a P&S sign, they can sign them up for the school system that way.
Right, but if I want to move in June, if it takes me a couple months to find a house, I'm back to May. If it's 30 to 45 days to get it from start to finish, now in April. So it definitely, the earlier on the earlier end of spring is. And there's not, though, as much of an up and down as there used to be. And I think technology speaks to that fact that keeps us all active and dinging the phones. We've got my search set up and I'm getting it daily. So it doesn't let you take the time off like it used to.
I agree.
I think, though, traditionally July tends to be a slower. July is a huge vacation month.
It is.
So that tends to have a little bit of a slower. If someone's saying, tell me when I shouldn't, we sell houses in July, list them too, but that's probably one of the slower. And then when you get to the true holiday, Thanksgiving, Christmas time frame, those, if I were to pick, those would be the two slower I would pick.
Slower. That would be slower for buyers coming to see your home, but also less competition.
Correct.
Of sellers selling their home. So there's there's some involuntary sellers as well sometimes. And I've run into these involuntary sellers, whether it's a divorce situation or a death in the family, an estate sale. These can be rushes. Sometimes you have to get it done quickly. Other times it drags itself out, or you're not prepared because you're trying to do a bunch of repairs to the house thinking you got to get all this done. I've heard of clients that with estate sales where a family member's passed away or parents, and then you're in there trying to clear out the house and sell it and get rid of stuff. And then you call an agent to evaluate the home because you wanted it to be nice and pretty and clean when they got there. And you're starting to miss the market, and you're missing things. You're doing things you didn't need to do. Can you speak to any of that?
Well, right, and that's important to Carlson, obviously, because there's that estate sale and the attorneys that you need to get a hold of to make sure that you have the right to sell the house.
Yep.
And sometimes that gets overlooked, and they say, we're ready.
Right.
And I say, great, the deed is still in mom and dad's name, and mom and dad are not here anymore.
Yeah.
So have you talked to an attorney about that? And a lot of times you get the blank look on their face. And that, unfortunately, can take some time to do.
Yes, it can.
So that is another reason.
So estate issues, that's where I was thinking the legal compliance stuff that comes in that kind of delays sales. Like we just had a closing delayed a week because they couldn't get the license to sell in time, and we had to push the sale out. So those are issues I've seen with sellers. Anything else you can think of? I mean, clearly maintenance and putting the house together, having it staged properly, and taking the proper time to do that.
But I'm gonna go back to the selling the mom and dad's house for a minute. And you said they want to wait till it's all pretty to call us in.
Yeah.
We can see through all that stuff, and we can also, through our years, we've got a lot of affiliates that can help them. So what do I do with all the mom and dad stuff?
Yeah.
Well, we can recommend certain places to bring it. People can come in, whether they're antique dealers or something like that, and help clean that house out for you, so you're not killing yourself doing it all. Yeah. So going back to that, it doesn't have to be pretty for us to see. I know you want it to be pretty, but it doesn't have to be pretty. We'll help you get to the pretty, but there's a lot of stuff behind the pretty that needs to be done first.
That's great to say. You can see through the clutter, the stuff that has been updated for a long time, and you can kind of identify that needs to get taken care of. Don't worry about that.
Right.
And that's helpful.
And put it in a chronological order for them. Yeah. Of what they really need to take care of first. Yeah. So and that helps and makes it a little bit more manageable and less stressful.
Why do you think a seller might be anxious about calling a real estate agent in early? I mean, if you're a seller of a home, are there things you can think of that they should not be worried about that they seem to like?
Yes. So I think sometimes they feel like we're ready. Okay, we're going to put it on the market tomorrow. Right. Like, okay, you called us in, we're ready to go. And we're getting business that can be a year out, and so that's not unusual. But I think that's the fear of they're going to push us too fast, or we're just thinking about it. That's a big, that's fine. But that's when because there is a lot to do, and it makes it far less stressful if you have the time to do it.
Yeah. So really, they need to not feel anxious about calling you to say, I just need some initial opinions from you. Is it okay if I ask you for your help now? Sure. Isn't that? Right. And we're afraid of asking for help sometimes too early because they think you're going to want to put it on right away. Right. And you're going to be upset with them because you wasted their time or something, and that's not the case.
And we're looking at things like if you're near conservation, when you think of other legal issues. So if you're sitting near conservation land and you've done something to your house, you've done an addition, or that if you have an open order of conditions, that can take a little while for something to get your certificate of compliance, to make sure that everything was done right, everything was closed out, those permits and what have you. So those are all the things that will allow you the time and just far less stressful.
Right, it's a great point. Yeah, that the order of conditions and like I said, the permits. That did you do any updating with the house? Yeah, we finished the basement. Right. Did you pull a permit? No. Cousin Jimmy did it. Did he pull a permit? No. So
what are the issues going to be? Right.
There's some issues around that as well. Yeah.
Less and less today, but still some issues. I've run into them. I was thinking to myself while you were talking. Also. Our service level, even me as a mortgage lender, as a real estate professional, it must be more difficult to provide the level of service you like to provide when you're rushed.
Right.
And
good point.
Isn't that true? And people are doing a disservice to themselves by trying to rush us into giving them something very, very quickly, because it's a lot easier to miss something, right?
Correct, right.
I mean, I had to do a ton of pre-approvals last week in a rush, and I was worried about missing something, staying up late, and getting tired when I'm trying to do a pre-approval to help somebody really fast to get a pre-approval done. I mean, it must be the same.
Right, because you don't want to change your level of service. You want to make sure they're getting the best service, so it is
creates a swell in your platform.
Right.
It does.
And then things that we would recommend potentially, you just don't have the time for.
Right.
So we're going to have to truncate this list, and let's forget about these 10 items, which we would love to do, but now we're just going to be able to do the top 5 instead of the top 15.
And like we said earlier, we create that solution-based project for them based on their needs and what they can accomplish.
Yeah.
So if we'd love to get the room painted or a new roof on or the window that lost its seal fixed, if they don't have the ability to do it, whether it's time or money, that's okay.
Right.
We'll disclose that. It may affect the price, and they know that. So we're putting in front of them, if you do all these things, this would most likely be our suggested list price and sell price. If you can't do them, that's okay. Yeah. It's going to be here. So what do you want to obtain? Is making that extra money important to you, time and effort? Sure, then great. Let's do it. And you don't have to rush to get it on. We can pick that time frame that works for you.
That's perfect. That's perfect. I had a house in Wilmington. My wife and I bought our first house, and we were going to finish the basement. And a real estate appraiser gave me the greatest advice. He said, don't put all of the type of high-end materials and money into the basement that you would put into and finishing an attic or finishing a bonus room, because it's not gross living area all the time. You know, it's not going to be dollar for dollar like an upstairs would be,
Correct.
like a kitchen might be.
Correct.
Yes.
I thought that was great, and those are the kind of nuggets of information you can give somebody way ahead of time. To hey, don't bother updating those lighting because
it's not going to help.
It's not going to help you get a bigger price, which is what you want.
That's right.
As a seller.
Yeah, and there's certain what they call money rooms of the house.
Yeah.
Your kitchen, your main bedroom, or the nice big family room. Concentrate on those. Don't worry about the crazy color that might be in your son's room. They can overlook that. Yeah, if we can get it painted, great, but that might not be on the A list necessarily.
Right. I love it. So let's make a shift over to buyers and talk about why buyers should engage with a real estate professional early on. What are some of the advantages of talking with you, just having a consultation with you ahead of time?
Because people understand they need to move, they have a general idea where and what kind of house they want to be in, but maybe your budget can't accomplish all those things. So to sit down early and say, here's what I'm hoping to do, here's what I'm hoping to be in there, now we can bring up questions about, okay, what have you thought about this area, and what do you need to be close to? Do you need transportation? Where are you heading? Where's your family? And if what they were thinking cannot be accomplished, we can kind of steer them to, have you thought about this town? This town is growing, so it hasn't really hit the, prices aren't as high as when you're getting closer to Boston, but has a lot of great amenities of what you're looking for, so have you thought about looking in this particular town? So it helps sometimes broaden or narrow somebody's search to be able to talk through with us what they're looking for.
So geographically, you can isolate their needs better, maybe expand their horizons a little bit. Type of property. Maybe they didn't think about buying this type or that type. Maybe they don't even know about it. Right. They don't realize that there's things called single-family detached homes that look just like regular houses.
Right.
Yes. That might satisfy a need. Financially, obviously I'm a mortgage lender, so I can see clearly the need for someone to get prepared ahead of time financially. And also, again, if you get, you don't buy a house every day, I say to people, if you could spend some time just getting a little bit of education, upfront knowledge, preparation, it removes a lot of the anxiety, and I think also helps people to act quickly. Right. We just did this.
Exactly. And we do a buyer consultation. So the two of us will sit down together with the individual, whether they come in our office or we do a Zoom call and find out, like Linda said, really what they're looking for, especially first-time buyers that haven't been in this. We're going to ask them, what's your long-term goal with this? Well, I just want to get in the market. I want to get a quick condo. Well, great. What's after that? Are you going to rent it? Are you going to sell it? And figure out what's going on, because when we're looking for homes for them, we're going to go back and say, remember you said you were going to buy this, live here for about 5 years, and then rent it. So you really should be looking at maybe 2 bedrooms. They sell more. Or this town is a better rental market for you to do in. So it's good to know what their long-term goal is, and they may not know what their long-term goal is. So like Linda said, we're going to ask the right leading questions and try to help them figure that out versus just, I want to buy a house.
That's great. Is there anything with market dynamics that can affect a buyer's, whether it's timing or anything like that, where a buyer should be talking with you earlier because of, how the market's moving? Have you run into any challenges where buyers have come to you too late and missed an opportunity or something like that?
When some people try and time the market, that tends to be a tough one.
Well, we're in that situation now where
yes.
rates are still a little high, they're coming down, but house prices seem to keep climbing. And I hear a lot of people saying they're going to go sit on the sidelines again because rates are still high and it's frustrating.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Where do you see that causing problems for people as they wait too long?
Because there's a decent amount of buyers out there to begin with, and then if you add everybody sitting on the sidelines,
a lot of them.
And then they're all waiting for that same whatever they think is the right time, then that sideline now is going to join all those buyers that are there. So your competition as a buyer is just increased when you put everybody together now who thinks it's the right time to buy after whatever that magical change is.
Very true.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's always the right time to buy if you can get the right deal.
Right.
And if you can figure out exactly what you're looking for, get in at the right time. Talk with someone like you that says if I buy now and I could refinance later, or is there a buy down program still available, or what other programs are available for me that make it worth to beat your own competition that's out there. It's a tough buyer's market right now. It's still in the seller's favor. The competition is there. But I wouldn't sit on the sidelines if I was a buyer. Let those other people think that way. Keep going after. We've written a lot of offers, and sometimes they don't get it on the first, second, or third, or fourth one. But you stick with it, and you'll find that perfect house for you.
So you and I started talking about this subject a little while ago, and this subject we're talking about now. What was on your mind? How does this make your jobs less fun or more difficult when people wait too long, or more fun when they don't, when they talk with you early? Can you speak to anything like that?
Talking to us early, we can work better as a team long term, I feel, and we really know what they're looking for.
Right.
And the more comfortable, what I find is the more comfortable they get with us, the more they'll start to tell us.
They trust you.
Yes. And the other thing is we know everybody is busy. So it's like, I'm busy with work, I'm busy with that. That's okay. I'll go preview for you. I'll remember the list of things you told me. I can go look at the house and say, hey, Tony, this one might work for you. It checks a lot of the boxes. Or I go there and say, it's really not going to work. We should have Google mapped this one before I showed up. It's right next to the power lines, or you're going to hear the highway noise or something like that. So use us to go and preview for you as well if you're too busy. But the earlier you come and the earlier that we can create a relationship, a trusting relationship, it's all the much better. And we've worked with buyers for a long time.
Yes.
We work sometimes well over a year, and that's okay. Because they'll come and they'll apologize. I'm dragging you around all the time. It's like, no, you're not. That's okay. Right. And plus, I'm seeing the inventory. I may not have looked at that house if I didn't have somebody looking for it or asking to look for it. Now I know more about it. So if I do get another call, I can talk to them and say, yeah, I've been in that house.
That's a great way to look at it. I didn't think of that. Linda, how about you? Any thoughts on what do you like your job better when you get to speak with the people earlier?
Well, it gives us I guess more time to truly understand what it is they're looking for. And that makes a better fit for the house. It makes the process a lot easier because there's stress on both sides, seller and buyer. It's a stressful either way. So it's a stressful time for that buyer, and it would increase, and the transaction may be not as comfortable. If you're trying to do it and jam everything in and learn the market as you go, because that's another, unless you're really seasoned out there doing a lot of transactions, you may have purchased before, but maybe that was 20 years ago, or maybe you're a first-time buyer. So there's just a lot to learn, and as we go, because it's a lot when we do our Zoom consultation, you're going to get a lot of information, but we keep talking about that as we meet at houses and talk through. So the education doesn't stop just at that one time, and then the more time you have to work with someone, the more education, and the better that person just feels all around.
I love it.
Right. And we pride ourselves on excellent service. That's what we want to provide. And if it's too rushed, sometimes it's hard to do that. If they call up and say, I want to get in this house, we've never really met them before, we don't even know if are they pre-approved, what's their financial situation. If it's a seasoned buyer that we've done before, maybe we'll some of our contractors or flippers. They know it. They might call us and say, I just saw the house. Great, Tony, let's go. We've dealt with them before. They understand everything. Not the first-time buyer, or it doesn't necessarily have to be a first-time first-time buyer, that's unfair. But someone that didn't plan on moving, saw a house that they think they want, and they want to run out and look at it.
Yeah.
And then a lot of people, like, online information is great. There's the mortgage calculators and all of that. But it's very disappointing if you put that in, and then we say, when we have our consultation, we say, have you done your pre-approval? No, not yet. Okay, let's talk to Tony. And then you're going to get all the information that really gets you to that pre-approval.
Yeah.
And they get sometimes disappointed if that's not exactly what they thought they were coming after.
So true.
Right.
Yeah.
So true.
And I'm sure, like you tell them too, is that there's the pre-approval, and then there's your budget.
Yeah.
I think it's two different things, and we'll tell people you may get pre-approved for a certain amount, but what is your budget?
That's right.
That you want to work from, and let that loan officer know. Here's almost work it backwards. I want to spend $3,000 principal, taxes, and interest. You do all your magical
Very
math,
easily.
and then come back and say, okay, Bill and Linda can look for a house up to X amount for you.
Yeah.
That I think makes it less stressful as well.
Yeah. Very good. This is excellent. Is there anything else you want to talk about on this subject, particularly with respect to people that are either going to wait too long to engage with a real estate agent, or if they could maybe think ahead of time and just reach out to you? Is there anything else you can say on this subject?
Well, I'll go back to the sellers, and maybe a reason why they don't reach out early. There's no obligation.
Yeah.
Just because we showed up and we're starting to help you and answer some questions, there's no signed contracts. Yeah, I would love to sign a contract right away and do it, but don't feel pressured into it. Get to know us.
Yeah.
We want to make sure that the team really works together. We want to understand what your goals are. We want to understand the house. We want to make sure we can market it properly. We want you on our marketing team because you know the house the best.
Yeah.
So it's important to do that up front, and there's not an obligation to have us come in and have a conversation.
Great to know. That's really great. So if somebody wants to get a hold of you guys, what's the best way for them to reach out to you? Do they engage you over text, email? Is it a phone call? What's the best way?
Yes.
Any
Any and all.
Any and all of those?
Yeah, I mean, we're on social media. We have email, cell phone.
Okay.
There's two of us, so
Yes.
you always should be able
Call
to get
either
one of
one of
us.
you?
Right.
That
yes.
doesn't make a difference.
Yeah. And would they start with a quick phone call? Would you meet them in person usually?
Right. So typically, someone gives a call or sends an email, and then we suggest the next step would be our buyer or seller consultation.
Got it. Okay. And what are the numbers? What are the best numbers to reach you guys at?
So my cell is 978-621-0570.
Okay.
And again, my kids knew that number when they were little.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, one day, somebody said something, and my kids are like, 978-621-0570. I'm like, how do you know that? Because I'd always be, if I were in the car or on the phone, and I'd be talking, that was always how I would end it, and they learned my cell phone number that way.
I love it.
Well, mine's much easier to remember.
Yeah.
It's 978-500-3336.
3336, great. Well, thank you guys. I really appreciate you coming and talking about when you should engage with a real estate professional. I think it'll help people searching this subject online, because I know it's been searched. I know it's a subject because I get the same sort of questions when people say, sorry, I'm talking to you really, really early.
Right.
I'm like, no, that's exactly
that's
what I want to.
perfect, yes.
This is perfect timing, so I think it's great. Thank you. Listen, before we go, I'd love to hear more about why you guys got into this business, because you could do a lot of things with a marketing, and sales background. You could do a lot of different things. You could go stay in high tech. You can go do something else in financial services, which is a huge field. Why? What is it about helping people acquire and sell real estate that is so, passionate for you?
Well, it is such a big thing financially, emotionally, personally for that buyer or seller that you're working for.
Yeah.
And there's nothing quite like it to be able to be the person who helps them find and accomplish their goal of what they're trying, and sometimes they're real happy goals and sometimes they're not as much, but to be able to get them to the point of where they want to end up and do that for them seamlessly, and to build relationships with them, because we have people that refer us most of our business comes from referrals. Right. So that means you're doing something right, and we develop those relationships, and people reach out all the time just asking a question years later, and that's the best part of it, actually.
That's great.
Right.
So, Bill, any thoughts why you're in this?
My DNA is I'm service driven.
Yeah.
So this is an industry that you have to be service driven because that's what you're providing. And again, we want to provide excellent service. So dealing with someone, whether they're buying or selling, seeing them through the entire process, some maybe some rough roads here and there, nothing is always perfect.
Right.
And to get to that final end road where it's satisfying and fulfilling that they did it. Because sometimes you can sell a house and you don't feel fulfilled. Sometimes you buy a house and you got cold feet. We don't want any of that.
Yeah.
And we tell people to take, especially buyers, take your time. It's not like you bought a pair of pants and you can bring it back if you don't like it. You want to make sure that this is the right one for you. And for the sellers, again, call us early so we can make sure that it's a non-stressful process, and you can feel good about taking the home that you were in for many years, loved, and handing it over to the next set of buyers that are going to love your home the same way you did.
Yeah. So service is tossed around a lot these days. I mean, it is. I mean, it's what everybody will claim that they provide high levels of service. What does it really look like for a seller to receive a high level of service from you? Like, what should they expect when they're working with you that says, wow, this is a high level of service? Have you guys ever thought it?
It's interesting you say that, because sometimes somebody only has one real estate agent and they don't know the difference between good service and bad service.
And they can't sell a house every day, so they can't test them out all the time.
Right, exactly. So it's interesting, that kind of service, as you mentioned, question. So I think the real test of service is, I think Bill used the word like fulfillment, like you feel fulfilled at the end of that transaction. There's always going to be stress, but you have felt like you had the least amount of stress in that, and you always knew what was coming next.
Right.
So that you were prepared, prepared for the next step of the process.
That sounds good. I mean, that to me, like, anxiety for me is not knowing what's coming, and relief and being calm is when I've thought about, I've seen the timeline, I know what's coming down the road. So. And it sounds like we can tie that right back into starting early.
Correct.
Yes.
Right. Exactly.
Well, I'm the same way. I'm a list person. I have to have things, and my list has to, and I like to check things off the list.
Right.
So it is important that we create, again, and it's a solution-based list for them. So if we understand what they want to do, can they do it? So this is going to be your list. This list is going to be different from somebody else, and we can work with either one of them, provided that you call us in early and that we can figure it all out for you.
Very true. Very true. Now, there's something on the table right now with how buyer representation has changed and has been talked about a lot. I'm starting to get a lot of phone calls from buyers that are just out there on their own, free agents. They think that they don't need any kind of service when they're going to open a door and look at a house. And I'm asking them very hard questions as I start talking with them, about how confident are you with negotiating with a highly skilled professional real estate agent who's representing the seller, and how much do you know everything there is to know about a home and real estate, and compliance issues and legal issues with buying a home. And a lot of those blank stares are coming back at me like, I don't know, I need to know that.
Right.
Why do I, can I just look it up online? Are you guys, how is it you're dealing with this change in how you're having to work with buyers in a different way? Or is it even different? And how should buyers be really looking at this?
So from a buyer agency agreement, so I guess the difference perhaps someone might be feeling is there's a requirement in how to sign a document as a buyer agent.
Like you're committing to work with and hiring a professional to work with you to buy a home, whereas it never was that formal before.
Right, there was no need, people have used them all the time, but there was no requirement.
Right.
So a lot of people never used them.
Most probably didn't.
Right. And it's the same, I guess if you looked at, it's the same job.
Yes.
On either side. I'm either going to list your house and help you sell it, and here's my contract to do that, or I'm going to work with you to make sure we get you the best purchase as a buyer agent, and we're going to sign a contract to do that. So I guess it's It's been a lot of talk.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a huge change in how we would go about working our business anyway.
Right. Right.
It would be a matter of probably paperwork and just, I guess, a more clear understanding from a seller side and a buyer side exactly how that commission gets paid, because that's what the lawsuit, that's what it was all about. I guess is just the transparency of that piece of it.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's important to deal with and work with professional, seasoned agents like ourselves that know how to articulate that to a buyer or a seller so they're comfortable with the process going forward. So true. With this new ruling that came out, you're already seeing a lot of realtors leave the market. So
that
find
what's going to happen.
Yes, exactly.
And you know, this is, I think there's some really good that's coming from this, because it is forcing both real estate and financial professionals, lenders, to work together earlier in the life cycle of a client to make sure that financially this is going to work out.
Correct.
There's no more Wild West, you know, throw an offer in and then figure out how to make it work and then maybe wonder what happens at the end and how much you're going to need. We have to prepare for this ahead of time, because there's a lot of numbers being thrown around early in a transaction that people need to understand ahead of time how things are going to get paid for, not just on the seller side but on the buyer side as well. And so I think it's been a great thing. I'm a numbers guy, so I love it. I love, you know, digging into this and having a new challenge to solve, and really it's kind of working out the same as it did before. So not a lot has changed with what's going to eventually, what the closing will look like necessarily. I think most of the time it's still going to be a seller crediting the buyer for a certain amount to pay for the services an agent provides to that buyer. And there may be abilities to finance it if they want to be competitive, but it all comes down to what the net to the seller is anyways, right?
Correct. Yes.
So, I mean, have you seen, because this is so new, you may not have a lot of experience with it, have you seen any challenges that you can speak to that we can give our listeners, you know, as a buyer, anything that they need to worry about or think about ahead of time?
I mean, just from a buyer to really understand what is this particular home offering for you, and like that, how can I afford it? It's basically, is there any issue with me affording
the house? Affording the house.
Right. And so we as agents now, you know, we need to figure out how much the commission was stripped out of that MLS system, so there's no more availability for that.
Yes, that's all.
And sometimes you cannot get that information until you put in an offer. It depends on how the other agent is working, the listing agent, if they're going to tell you or not. So we're prepared to do either way. You know, we're prepared to write it in. We're prepared to work with you as the lender to make sure, you know, here's the multiple scenarios that this house could end up being. Do you see any issues with the financing on either of these three scenarios?
Isn't that true?
Right. So everybody has more knowledge, really, like you're saying, upfront going into a purchase than we did before.
And a lot of that is kind of called out in that exclusive buyer agency agreement that they sign, and we highlight certain areas so they feel comfortable with it, as far as here's how we're going to go after that commission, here's how we could write it in the offer, here's how you could talk with Tony to maybe finance it. So all of that up front is discussed, so they know what they're getting into.
So again, talking early to both of you, understanding what services they're receiving as buyers, and why that's important to their buying success and the success at winning in this market, but also how it's going to work out in the end financially. All of those are clear benefits. I think I'm talking about it when I talk to buyers. I know what kind of service you guys provide to buyers because we work together so many times. I can see the difference that you provide. So it's easy for me to speak to it. I think it's easy for you to speak to it. It's not easy for them to understand how is that different from anybody else.
Right.
You know. And so I'm doing my part in talking as much as I can about it. But thank you guys. This has been great.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. We appreciate it.
Anything else you'd like to say? Any other questions you wanted to?
What else I got?
A little song and dance for us?
Well, no. Is there any kind of like have there been other challenges or things that you really wanted to get out there, and questions I can ask you?
I would say from the buyer standpoint, usually at this time of year it was slow, but I'm confident that the inventory is going to start to come back on. So hang in there with it. Don't get discouraged, even though it's hard.
So it's the end of August, beginning of September. Is there going to be continued inventory growth in the area? That's kind of the question, I think. Is that a good question to ask you?
Yes. Yes.
Right.
Okay.
And how we can put together winning offers for them, especially if they've failed in the past. What's changing in presenting those offers to the sellers? What work can we do up front to make sure that we're putting the best offer in that the seller is going to see?
Right.
Because we're still in a multi-offer situation. Not as crazy it was in those COVID years, but if a house comes on and it looks good and it's priced competitively, you can pretty much be guaranteed you're in a multi-offer situation.
You could speak to the area in which it's going to be more competitive or not as competitive, right?
Right.
Geographically?
Right. Correct. Right.
Okay.
Depending on where it is, what's been selling, where price ranges, and I mean there's still homes that are overpriced, and you will see not every house is going. You see price changes, and the other kind of tricky part is we are in election year.
Yeah.
So that always does affect the market to some degree.
Yeah. Interest rates are coming down already. So we'll probably see some more. The economy is finally slowing down, or the Fed is finally going, oh yeah, it is slowing down, and so they're going to start lowering the Fed funds rate. There's a trickle effect off into the mortgage world as well, even though they're not tied together.
Right.
The fact that the economy is slowing down, inflation is coming down, is really what the mortgage market is looking for, and we've been seeing it. So we should all expect to have lower interest rates, but I imagine a lot more competition as that rate comes down.
But like you said, don't wait for it.
Don't wait for it.
Buy the house now, refinance later.
Right. Competition from the buyers sitting on the sideline, or the sellers who have been waiting to put their house on the market to go buy something. So that's kind of like a double effect. Yeah.
Well, very good. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Tony.
Your time today.
You're welcome.
This was great.
This is really good.